Our masterclass series this year focuses on original voices in media, and we have heard from Aaron Sorkin and Armando Iannucci. Please join us tomorrow at 1:30 and welcome Korean auteur superstar Bong Joon-ho, director of Netflix's Okja, hosted by Rishi Mehta. Just a quick reminder, there is no photography or recording of these sessions. However, feel free to connect with our online audiences who are tuning into our live stream by using the hashtags and keep the conversation going. This is going to be a really great one. I am so honored to introduce today's masterclass conversation speaker, the incomparable Larry Wilmore. Before hosting the White House Correspondents Dinner and broing out with President Barack Obama, Larry's career has spanned decades in comedy and television. He's built that career as a grounding voice and humanist advocate for underserved audiences and creators. Whether he's writing sketch comedy or telling stories of family or reporting on injustice, Larry has brought a Black, gender equal, and human experience to the forefront through a comedic lens and empathetic intention. Peabody Award-winning producer, writer, comedian, actor, and mentor. He has worked with the Wayans brothers, Jim Carrey, Will Smith, Eddie Murphy, the late, wonderful, and great Bernie Mac, Whoopi Goldberg, Steve Carell, Tracy Ellis Ross, Anthony Anderson, Issa Rae, Jon Stewart. The list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. He created The Nightly Show with Larry Wilmore and introduced audiences to a wealth of new talented comedians and writers. The Daily Beast best described The Nightly Show as, at its core, a commitment to the idea of purposeful conversation rather than a moral superiority that comes with being right, which describes Larry Wilmore to a T. Larry Wilmore's new podcast, Black on the Air, on the Ringer Network, continues to tackle difficult issues. Larry's no-bullshit approach makes him not only one of the most important voices in comedy, but an essential voice in media. And this is why we're so thrilled to welcome him today. Hosting our masterclass is Jesse Wente, head of TIFF Cinematheque. Jesse's an Ojibwe broadcaster, curator, producer, and activist. So let's get to it, folks. Please welcome to the stage Jesse Wente and Mr. Larry Wilmore.
Thanks, Jeff.
Oh,
Nice.
well, this is nice. Good room.
I know, it's comfy. I like what you did with the flora.
Yeah. Plants are important.
Yes, flora and fauna. I'm more of a fauna man than a flora man, though.
Is this your first time in Toronto?
I was here before, but it was just a couple of days I was working, so I didn't get a chance to really soak in the city. I'm always like working, a couple of times I'm here, so. But it's beautiful, it's gorgeous. A friend of mine just moved here, and he's like, oh, you gotta come back and spend some time here. I'm like, yes, I'm trying to. So hopefully that'll happen soon.
Is it a relief at this point? I know Canada's not perfect, but is it a relief just to be, away?
Yes. For a number of reasons, yeah. You touch down and you go, you guys aren't as crazy here right now, I guess. And, you've had your share, especially in Toronto. You had a little cray-cray going on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was very entertaining, I might add. Very entertaining, yeah.
Are times like these a call to arms for artists and comedians?
I don't know about a call to arms. I always like to, of course I love to choose my words carefully. I feel like it's a time for clarity, and a time to make powerful distinctions, making sure that at every single moment you know exactly what's going on, because things seem so random right now. It does, guys. We have a president right now who, of course, the mild part is that he's a narcissistic sociopath, right? That's the mild part, right? Yeah, that's the part that's like, whatever, What politician isn't narcissistic? Some are sociopaths, but that beautiful combination of narcissistic sociopath makes him a little special, right? But he's so effing unpredictable, too. And I like, this past week, he just really screwed his own party, and it was hilarious. But then it makes me go, wait, I'm rooting for this, but yet I hate him at the same time. What am I gonna do with this feeling, But it's just unbelievable. I just hope we stay out of big trouble with some of the issues around the world. So that's my biggest fear.
Yeah. I mean, I must admit, as a huge fan of The Nightly Show, I mean,
Thanks.
I wish it was still on
Oh,
right now.
no, thank you. I appreciate it. Believe me, there were so many opportunities. We called it the unblackening like a year before, what was going on in the White House, And, oh, God, we were calling each other all during the election and everything. I mean, I remember election night. I felt like, remember Raiders of the Lost Ark, that Nazi whose face was melting, That's what I felt like as I'm watching it. Partly because I was frustrated because there was no outlet, But now I'm doing a podcast, which is a lot of fun, and getting a lot of some of that energy out there and interacting with fans and that kind of stuff too. So a little bit is out there. But a lot of people from The Nightly Show. Robin Thede, I just did a live event with her yesterday in New York. She has a show coming out on BET, and people are still out there doing some things, so that's good.
How much does the format, go, Nightly Show, podcasts, stand-up, writing shows, how much does that alter what you do, your message or your practice, your art?
God, it's very interesting question. It's tough because each form requires something different in terms of expression. What I love about narrative storytelling is that it's not as tied to topicality and has more of an evergreen quality to it. I can still put in the pilot to the Bernie Mac show and it could have been shot yesterday. There's nothing that topical about it, but it has a currency, what it was about was current at the time and everything. So just the way that you're putting your ideas into it requires a different process. But doing like a late night show or podcast or that, you're distilling the world differently. It's like comedy concentrate, I remember Chris Rock said a joke is just a sentence that's concentrated and funny, Something like that. Every word is so important. So every day, it's so exhausting too, because every day you're distilling what is your point of view about this and how are you going to get it out to the world. So it's a whole different process, especially for writing a movie. You could take a couple of years to distill the thing that it is that you want to say, So.
Do you have a preference, or do they work different muscles, creative muscles for you?
I think it's just different. I don't know if I have a preference. It's exhausting to do a nightly show type of thing every night, but there's something satisfying about being able to comment on things all the time. That's very satisfying, because then when it's gone, you don't really have a chance to. But I love storytelling. I always have, because the thing that I love the most is behavior, and that's what you can really tell with narrative storytelling. One of my all-time favorite shows was Candid Camera when I was a kid. And guys, one of the best Candid Cameras was this guy was teaching his wife how to bowl. And they had set it up so she would get a strike every time, right? It was so fantastic because the first time she bowls and she gets a strike, he goes, "That's great, honey. See, you did exactly like I taught you. That's exactly what I said to do. That's beautiful. Just do it again like I taught you, right? Just do it again like that, honey, and you do it." So she bowls again. It gets another strike. He goes, "Look at that. That's amazing. See, that's what I have to do it again." Gets another strike. He goes, "Wow. That's fantastic. Keep going." Fourth strike. He's like, "Whoa." Cut to the 8th frame. He's like this. Sitting off to the side. This is what you wanted. What's wrong with you? He couldn't take it anymore. But I love that. And it was pure behavior, not scripted at all, just observing people. It's my favorite. When I look at even the movies that I like, the stories that I like, working on The Office, things like that, just observing behavior, that type of storytelling is still my favorite type of thing.
When did you realize that you like to tell stories?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think I've always liked stories, but I didn't know if I could do it. I think I was a theater major, in college, and, you study all the classics and all that stuff, but you're also intimidated by it, too. And I was just trying to write jokes at the time. I wanted to be an actor and a stand-up comic, and, stand-up comedy was a little more accessible, even though I was intimidated by both. But I had a kind of a natural inclination to write jokes. My brain kind of thought that way. But I never considered myself a dramatic writer, somebody who could write that form until a little later when I got ideas that weren't necessarily jokes, that were just, needed to be expressed more. And so when I at one point in my career, I knew that Hollywood wouldn't find my type, and so I wanted to get into writing and producing. I kind of made that leap and kind of just really took a bet on myself. And just as I was doing it was when I realized how much I really liked it.
And is that because you weren't seeing roles for you?
Oh, yeah, no, not at all. Like during my time coming up, brothers had to be from the ghetto, You can't be smart, but you can be wise, You can be the magical Negro, like that's okay, Right, those types of things, right? But so there was a type of diversity that was missing that I knew I had to carve out that space for myself if I wanted to exist in it. And then when I did it, I realized how much I really loved writing and producing. At first I did it as a practical means to get, write stuff for myself. But I really enjoyed it the more that I did it. And realized how important it is for all diverse voices to get out behind the scenes, I call it controlling the narrative, making sure we're telling our own stories and having people in place that can tell your own stories. So it kind of started me being passionate to be a person who can help do that.
As a indigenous person, we have our own magical Indians too. So
yes.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I like your T-shirt. Indians discovered Columbus.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's true.
It's very nice.
That's true. He was just stumbling around.
Yeah, exactly.
But I find it interesting because you had to then sort of leave the system and create your own thing.
Right,
And that's a big pressure
well,
for a lot of people.
I did it within the system, actually.
Okay.
Right.
So, because one of the push and pulls, I think, for a lot of, marginalized, racialized people, gendered people in this is how much can we achieve within the system?
Right.
Or do you have to build it something outside? You have to build something that's onto itself.
It's a combination of factors. I was speaking to some college students a couple of years ago about this, and I said, guys, don't think it's like racism or sexism or genderism or whatever it is that maybe keeps you on the sideline. It really is invisibility. It really is that people just don't see you and they don't regard you, and you have to do so much just to get noticed. So the more that you have the ability to do that, whether it's with people who can help open the door for you or you blast the door open yourself, you do something on the side that gets noticed, because it's all about getting noticed and busting through that door and people going, oh, okay, that works too. Because to me, the most important color to Hollywood is green. That's a fact, And as soon as something, brings in the green, their fault is they'll just keep doing that to the death, and then blame that for not being able to get green anymore. Well, sorry, Korean people, we tried to do a TV show with you, but it didn't work. So we're not ever going to do any more, is how they think sometimes.
So once you're in through the door and you're there, but then that comes with its own pressures.
Absolutely.
In terms of what the community may be thinking, what your place or what you should do now that you've attained that position, but also expectations from outside the community in terms of now you're the chosen and you're there.
Yeah, I've always tried to battle that by being as authentic as I can all the time. So I've said no more in my career than I've said yes to things, and tried to be the one who's creating a space, whether it succeeds or fails, just to have more of a distinct stamp on something, because the more distinct it is, the more we're telling our stories, and the more other stories can be told, and that sort of thing. So being keenly aware that I was one of the first. I've always been aware of that, so I've tried to make an effort for that. And sometimes it doesn't pay off. The Bernie Mac show, I was so proud of it. I was fired at the end of my second year after winning every award you could possibly win, just because they didn't believe in the show. They didn't understand it. There's nothing I could do about it, so.
One of the things I admire most about your career is that while you were through the door early, you've made so much space for others. What are the challenges of that? Because then you're not just through the door, you're holding the door open.
Right. To me, it's a conscious decision and an active decision that I did all the time. I never let it be an accident. Like even on the nightly show, when we were choosing our staff, people say, so did you do a blind submission thing? I go, no, motherfuckers, I hired a black woman to be to be the head writer on purpose because they never get a chance to do that, you know. And she was immensely qualified. It was Robin Thede. And I'm the one who said, yes, you can do that. You don't need extra qualifications that we always need to get in the door when other people just need regular qualifications. But I've tried to do that by hiring female directors when I had a chance to do it, especially for single camera shows. This was like 15, 16 years ago, you know, when it was hard for female directors to get into comedies. They just, I don't know, there was a prejudice against them, so I hired a ton of them. Jamie Babbitt, you know, is doing great stuff now. Gina Price, Gina Blythewood, all kinds of people of color doing it for single camera shows. There's just a prejudice in Hollywood. Hollywood is this supposedly this liberal bastion, but those motherfuckers are as prejudiced as anybody out there. It's so funny. They are, I'm telling you. But at the same time, you win them over with green. That's the other thing. They're so disingenuous in a very funny way.
For you, who did you look to?
And it's some of the most incredibly creative people out there, too, at the same time.
That's true.
That's why there's so much in it, yeah.
Yeah, there's that push and pull.
Yeah, there's so much in that stew, you know, it's really funny. Yeah.
Who did you look to? Like, who were your creative role models?
Well, my first, I don't know if it was role model so much as inspiration, was Keenan Ivory Wayans. Because Keenan created In Living Color, and he did a movie called I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, and he and Robert Townsend did Hollywood Shuffle together, which was their comment on that casting process in Hollywood, and having to be urban was what the name of it was. That was the code name for black, was urban. You know? Like, what does that even mean? You know, like, aren't Friends? Isn't that cast urban? You know, they live in a city. Why is Only Brothers urban? What does that mean? You know, it's always these code words, which is great. But he was able. Keenan was, I mean, a trailblazer. He not only helped usher in the culture of hip-hop onto television, almost single-handedly, him and Arsenio almost, but he did it on his terms. He was the showrunner and the star. He always dictated his own terms. He said what he wanted to do. He was an asshole in the way that other people got to be assholes. I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. I mean it in a, I'm going to do this and this is my vision sense, you know, that we applaud when, you know, right, you know what I'm saying.
I know exactly
when other
what
people
you're saying.
do, but you get a woman directing a film and she wants to do what she wants to do, she's difficult,
Yes,
you know, that
exactly.
type of thing, right? And so, but Keenan didn't give him right? And I thought, wow, that is amazing, you know, and I just saw the power of just doing your own thing and making that mark, you know.
Was your family always supportive of your...
No, just like any family. Right? They're not. Why should I sugarcoat it, right? It's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, and my family's crazy anyway, so whatever, you know. But, and they always say, well, maybe you should have something to fall back on. And I said, well, I don't see my life as a series of fallbacks. I see it as a series of spring forwards, you know. So I think I'm going to design it around things I'm passionate about and just dive into those, rather than cautiously approach it with things I would feel suffocated by and hope I don't trip into that, you know? But as you got more successful, then they jump on that train, you know, and they're in the caboose racing to the front, right? You know, that type of thing, but in a nice way, so.
I mean, did they have a sense that you were...
I'm so forgiving with this type of thing. Right? No, they never supported me, those assholes. So. Did they have a sense?
Like that you were funny and that like this was...
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, my brother and I were very funny growing up. We always made fun of everybody. We went to Catholic school. We always made fun of all the priests and nuns and everything. And did impressions of all our relatives, people in the block. And our parents are just funny characters. So they're funny, but they don't know that they're funny. So that was always our cue that we took from that, yeah.
One of the streams of discourse that we've been having recently, some of it came out of Charlottesville. In Canada, we've had it similar around monuments, and is, you know, when we see an action like that, an event, there's this dialogue around the reaction to, say, the fascists, how the anti-fascists react, or in this Canadian example that just happened a couple days ago, this political leader was confronted by this screaming woman, and he just said, you know, love and courage, and And yet the discourse after was about what he did, as opposed to her actions showing up.
Was he the Sikh?
Yes, exactly. And she's there spouting Islamophobia.
Right.
Does that tone policing ever leak into creative spaces where that's a problem, where you have to combat, I'm allowed to react however I want to these situations?
Well, I always try to cut to the core of things, It's one of the things I love to do. And yeah, the whole notion of false equivalencies is one of the things my radar tries to look out for immediately. So I like to tear that down as much as possible, and you can put that into your storytelling and that kind of thing too. But yeah, and the way people report on things, so much of it is such bullshit. I was talking about this in my podcast yesterday, just breaking down the way truth is disseminated and all that stuff. You just have to be on the lookout and on your toes for things. It's easy to get tricked into complacency about a lot of things, just because people would rather have just non-conflict rather than proper conflict. I think there's a proper conflict against forces that are not good, And then hopefully that leads to non-conflict. But there's nothing wrong with conflict, Without conflict, without friction, you don't get heat. Without heat, you can't eat. You gotta cook.
Yeah.
All right?
Do you...
I know you can just take some fruit off a tree and eat it. But try making that pie with that fruit. That's all I'm saying. Come on, Toronto.
It's true. I have no
My
argument.
metaphors don't always make sense,
But there's no argument against pie, really.
who doesn't love pie is all I'm saying.
You
That's
have to-
really
you
all
have
I'm
to
trying
love-
to say.
I love pie.
That's all of my art is about pie, Jesse. How do you make the pie? How do we get slices of the pie?
Do you? What's your self-censor? Like, do you have any filter, or are you, how do you approach those sorts of, as you said when we started, choosing your words carefully?
Well, I think you have to do your homework, for certain things. Like for a lot of things, I'm old enough where I say, you're a researcher, but I'm a witness, I was around when these motherfuckers were saying these things. I know what this is about, But things like the monuments and stuff in the Civil War, people forget why those were erected and what they represent to the people. And, it was celebrating a South that wanted to hold on to slavery. And so the celebration of these things is very offensive. I mean, just knowing that it existed and putting it in a museum is one thing, but it's the celebration of it is the part that's offensive, and people can't see that. And I was making the joke, what if in Germany, they were just naming things after, like, Goebbels Lane, you go down there and take Mengele Parkway till you get to the Hitler Auditorium, It's like, why are you naming that? That's offensive. Well, it's part of our past, we don't want to forget it. Some things you do want to forget.
Well, and their storytelling,
Yeah.
the monuments, both, why they were there and what they are saying to people.
Right.
They're continuing a narrative or furthering a specific narrative.
And it's funny that a lot of the American South, it's like one of the few places that loves to celebrate losing stuff, Civil War, let's keep celebrating that, Or even Nazis, neo-Nazis, yeah, Germany lost, let's keep celebrating that. I don't understand that at all.
Yeah. But how do we, it's when we're talking about context and being informed, we're in a moment where that seems challenging. I read a tweet this morning that was profound, which is a disturbing statement.
A tweet was profound.
That's
Wow.
sort of a disturbing thought. But
that is disturbing.
It was just about the idea that for years people scoffed at the notion of media literacy. You're just watching TV, and yet now we're in a situation where media literacy is incredibly important. And like, how do we, and shows like The Nightly Show or The Daily Show, one of their core functions ultimately was media literacy.
Right.
So how do we do this in the age of fake news where from the very highest seated position in America, you have fake news, you have challenges to media literacy.
I know, you have gibberish coming out all the time. I think if you're interested in it, that it's all about homework. It's reading enough, it's checking out things for yourself, recognizing bias when you see it and knowing that certain things are said with bias. I was talking about this yesterday. I was saying how much the different ways truth come out. I feel like there's misinformation, disinformation, which I call false news, fake news, and then bullshit, you know. Like those are the four things. Misinformation when something's just wrong. The news gets something wrong. Disinformation is purposely putting out false information for the purposes of political reasons or whatever. That's actually false news. Fake news is when you feel the news doesn't conform to your bias. You call it fake news. You know, that's what fake news is. That's what Trump has made that fake news. Like, for instance, if you believe the Earth is 6,000 years old and there's a story about dinosaurs that lived a million years ago, you consider that fake news. That's fake news is. Bullshit is when, now this is gonna sound weird. Let me see if I remember the words properly too. When the tablecloth, God, I had a good phrase for this. What it is the ingrained dogma is the tablecloth by which you then have the dinner of your discussion on. I know it sounds like bullshit, but trust me on this. Okay, so you lay down this false starting point, and then you have a discussion from the false starting point, you know. And like I was talking about CNN, for example, their tablecloth is news is entertainment, all right? So that's why a lot of the discussions in CNN are bullshit, because their goal is to entertain. Sometimes we get the news out of it, and sometimes, yeah, I agree with some of the people, but their ethos is to entertain. A lot of things out of Fox News, their ethos is, or the tablecloth, is that the left has an assault on America, and white people are the primary targets of that assault. And so most of the stuff that comes out of their mouths is bullshit, because that's their agenda, you know. And politicians, their tablecloth is to get votes and to get reelected. So you can barely believe anything a politician says. Yes, sometimes they're right, sometimes you agree with them, but by and large, anything that comes out of their mouth is bullshit, and it's our job to look past that and see what the fuck is really going on, you know, because they need to get votes, they need to get reelected, and they're bound by that agenda. So that's how bullshit forms, you know.
What happens when, you talked about CNN's tablecloth?
Yeah, entertainment.
Entertainment. What happens?
And crisis. CNN loves a crisis.
True, yeah.
They cannot get, like that, when that Malaysia plane went down, they had an orgasm for like a year. It was fantastic. Seeing like this hurricane, they're putting everybody, this woman almost was swept away by the hurricane, the CNN reporter. It was so sad. And even Jake finally said, Jake Tapper, go inside. We've gotten the entertainment value. Why do you have to be out in the hurricane? Be inside in the window, tell us about it. We believe you, CNN. We don't need the extra drama. They create these graphics of Hurricane Irma and this dramatic opening and everything. Like it's a mini fucking series that we're watching, you know? And we just buy it because we're so used to it now. And it's the news. It's a tragedy. People may die. And they've already produced something for it. Like, it's production that they've actually... Someone went in a room and said, I don't know, this Irma, what's the best representation of that? What about biblical clouds? You know, like it's an apocalypse. That's fucking awesome. Let's use that. You know? Hey, guys, aren't we telling the news? Shut the fuck up. Get out of here. Go to PBS, where that's what they do, you know.
So what happens?
And by the way,
yeah.
I'm not saying, and it is entertaining. They do their job. I watch CNN, you know. Like people say, Larry, why do you watch CNN? Because I have to talk about this crap. But I'm not saying it's not compelling, but that's exactly why that's how they get you. It's like crack, you guys. The Crack News Network is what I call it now. I keep changing what it means, what it stands for. It's Crack News Network now. Yeah.
When the news becomes entertainment,
yes.
and then entertainers start delivering
yes.
what looks like news.
Because we're in an upside-down world,
yeah.
Patty Chayefsky talked about this in Network, you know. I mean, he predicted all of it. It was so prescient. And he was commenting on an era that had already happened from his point of view. It wasn't even a prediction as far as he was concerned. You know, he was commenting on the time. So go, if you haven't seen Network, please take a look at it. It talks about all of this.
So do you take some of that in as someone who's telling stories, that's some of it has to be like news or some informative for, you know, you're giving the audience something that they can then use to decide, you know, life decisions or move
for storytelling. What do you mean now?
Well, I'm just wondering, like, you know, when the nightly show is obviously an example of, you know, you're doing talking political concepts, but when you write a show, when you step out of that, is that still something that you feel pressure?
No, not really. It's not really a thing in just in what I'll call regular storytelling. I'm tapping into something else, I think, with that. Because Nightly Show and that kind of stuff is direct comedy critique and that kind of stuff, so I'm really tapping into that. But for storytelling, I'll look into the relationships of the people on the screen or that type of thing, or how it might affect you on a personal level, that type of thing, and go a little deeper in terms of the human story, because that's more of what we're telling when we're telling stories, is, you know, it's that human journey and that type of thing. So, yeah, different process there.
You've worked with an extraordinary group of talented
Very, very fortunate.
people. What is the nature of a great collaboration?
That's a good question. I think there's a lot of things. Chemistry is a big issue in collaboration. You know, being able to sense that you're on the same page. That might be a button. You might want to check it out. I know, I hate it when that happens too. But chemistry is really important, you know, getting along with somebody, feeling like you're on the same page. You can tell that if conversation seems very natural, finishing each other's sentences, sometimes like that. Having the same type of values for what it is you want to tell. Like if you're doing a story about parenting, you both have opinions on that that are gelling for the story. If you're telling a story about breakups, you know, you both have an insight into that is going to do something. So I think it's finding those things, and then finding the ways to work that works for that particular collaboration, because not all of them work the same. You know?
Yeah, so it's an individual.
Each case is a little different,
Yeah.
but I know, well, maybe that's just how I approach it, because I think some people have hard and fast rules about how they like to collaborate, but I like to take each case differently and kind of feel it out for what it is. I'm more intuitive in that way, because I'm trying to get the best out of that particular situation, you know, for what it is, rather than have a hard and fast rule that I like to do.
And the writer's room for you when on a show, what does that look like for you, and how do you approach that that space?
Yeah, writer's room is like its own organism in some ways. You know, in typical comedy in the States, where you're working for a network, you're going to be in that room together for a good 6-7 months. You know, maybe even longer, maybe 8 months. So you definitely want to have people there who you like to be trapped in that hull of a ship for the long term. You know, so the more you can keep assholes out of the room, you know, you want to do that. Hopefully you're not that asshole too yourself, right? So you definitely want to look at personalities, how well people gel. You're kind of a conductor of a symphony a lot of times, you know. You want to make sure you're hearing voices, and the machine itself is working properly, so people don't get burnt out too quick, or they don't want to, you know, be there creating in the right way and that sort of thing. A lot of it are management issues more than anything else, you know, before you even get to the writing.
Is there something the Larry of now would tell the Larry, you know, that was just about to step behind the mic for the first time? Is there something you would say to the younger you?
But before I did stand-up, you mean?
Yeah, just before your first performance, before your first creative, you know, what advice would you tell yourself?
Oh, God. Don't listen to anybody, including yourself. So even what I'm saying right now, disregard.
Okay, I want to go to...
And I would understand that, too. I would go, oh, okay, I got you, Larry.
Let's go. I want to do a lightning round. So I'm going to ask you questions. We'll do quick.
Great.
Sports legend you most want to interview. I heard your interview with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yes, so much fun.
Terrific on the podcast.
Yeah.
Who would you most like to in that chair?
Well, I wish I could have interviewed Ali back in the day. I was really fortunate to have met the champ a couple of times. But there was so much I would have loved to have asked him. He's probably at the top of that list. God, there's so many sports people. I'm a big lover of sports, always have been. There are a lot of people in different sports I'd love to talk to as well. So, I don't know. There's too many people, I think, on that
Too many,
list.
okay.
But he'd be at the top of it, yeah.
Your favorite movie? We're at the TIFF. So your favorite
TIFF, yes.
movie and why? Your favorite movie?
My all-time favorite movie?
All-time favorite movie and why you like it?
Wow. I know, that changes sometimes. We were talking
Yeah, we were
about
talking
that.
about
Okay, so here's a movie I keep going back to, and I don't know why, but it's The Graduate. I know, is that surprising?
That's a good one.
But it's my favorite movie for a lot of different reasons. First of all, it's a brilliant movie, and it was a seminal movie. It has great performances in it. Dustin Hoffman, arguably at his best, close, and it just shot out of the cannon, his first thing. But what Mike Nichols did as a director is breathtaking to me in that movie. And he broke so many rules at that time. He kind of led the way with his editing. I was so in love with Anne Bancroft when I first saw it, and her performance is haunting in it, So the performances he got out of the cast, the movie itself, it had this rebelliousness to it, but then it kind of, at the end, was kind of unsure of its rebellion, when it ended. There was kind of this moment where it's like, okay, we did all this. Like, I would have loved to have seen, I once had an idea called After Elaine. After Elaine! Like what happens after that?
Yeah.
Which is fascinating to me. But he kind of started that whole running to the church, type of move, that some movies copied, The music, Simon & Garfunkel's soundtrack in it, just works, It even evokes its time in a way that is kind of timeless and doesn't feel dated to me. It's just a great movie on so many different levels. I think it just moved me at a time when I first saw it, too, that just stuck with me. But I do have a lot of favorites, but I always pick that one as the one for all those different reasons.
I think it's a very, very worthy choice, for sure. Is there, maybe it's the same answer, but is there a movie or TV show that you wish you'd made?
Oh, God. There's so many of them. I know. There's a good kind of jealousy, right? It's like, I wish I had done that. Okay, here's a movie, let me see, that I wished I had made. These are tough ones, Jesse.
Yeah, I know, it's lightning round.
I know, and it's lightning, too. Is there a way I can narrow the category a little bit?
Well, in the last 10 years, like the last movie you saw where you're like, God damn it, I wish I'd written that, or I wish I'd directed that.
Okay, I'll tell you very recently. Jordan Peele's film, Get Out.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yes. I was fortunate enough to just have lunch with Jordan, and I was just going on and on about it, That was the first film he directed. He had a complete vision for it. But the genre smashing of it, and putting commentary, I love that type of thing. Yes, so I have current jealousy right now for that. I would have loved to have done that. It was so good. It was so funny, and it was smart and scary in all the right ways, too. Yeah, it was great.
Someone you haven't worked with, but you would love to?
In what category?
Let's say actor or someone like Issa Rae or creative like that.
Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks can just do anything. But I love how his mind works too. Like I love the other projects he's done. Like I'm a bit space kind of nut too, and I love that he did From the Earth to the Moon and even Apollo 13 and some of that stuff. But I would love to sit in a room and just talk to Tom Hanks and figure out something. That would be so much fun.
Magic or Kobe? Kobe or Magic?
Come on, man, it's Magic.
Score. Thank you. That is the correct answer.
Laker fans? It's not even close.
What is the best joke?
Come on, Jesse, you can do better than that.
Okay. I'm going to do better. What is the best joke you've ever written, and what inspired it?
Wow, the best joke I've ever written. Oh, my God. Well, I would say the most enduring one. I don't know if it's the best. I have a couple of favorites. I have a favorite that I wrote on the PJs. It was an animated show we did. And a woman said she was kind of a thorn to Thurgood, who's the lead character. She goes, I like my coffee like I like my men, which is a standard joke, right? And I wanted to do a different take on it. She goes, I like my coffee like I like my men. No, it was, I want to get this right. She didn't say it, oh, she said Jimmy likes his coffee like he likes his women. She was talking about her husband. She goes, Jimmy likes his coffee like he likes his women. So Thurgood says, fine, anybody else want a big-ass coffee? Yeah. Boom. Bam. One of my favorites. Disrespectful in a beautiful way. In a beautiful way. I don't know. I think that's probably my favorite when I think of it. Yeah. I have a lot of personal favorites, but that was pretty good. That was a sneaky one. Yeah.
Okay. Sports, designated hitter or no designated hitter?
No designated hitter. Come on, man.
Make them hit?
Absolutely. It gives you much more strategy in the game. Designated hitter, there's no strategy in that. I mean, making the pitcher hit forces you to make moves that can change the outcome of the game.
Okay, this is a good one. What the fuck is up with this Colin Kaepernick thing? Like, should he not be playing in the NFL?
Story?
Do you guys know? Like, what's going on down there? What's your take?
Is America racist? Is that what you're asking me? You seem so surprised about this.
Yeah, the NFL too,
So some of this is a bit disingenuous because a lot of times what happens is I think media, sometimes they create stories and then act like they don't create it, Yeah. And the media created this story, and I'll tell you what. So Colin Kaepernick had a silent protest he was conducting. He was sitting during the national anthem on the sidelines before the start of a football game, and it was his silent protest against police brutality in America. He just thought America could do better, and it was his way of just silent. He didn't talk about it, didn't say anything. And then a reporter asked him one day, why are you sitting during the national anthem? And then he told the reporter, and then it became a story. So he didn't publicize this, he didn't go out and talk about it. And then he was, Negro non grata,
Yeah, everyone else is getting signed. And
exactly. After that, he can't get a job and that type of thing, But because people felt he disrespected the flag and, the national anthem. My take on this was, I disagreed with the premise of that. I felt like if he said he was sitting because he thought our country could do a better job, like against breast cancer, there are too many women dying, we could just do better. So I'm sitting during the national anthem. I think they would have been, God bless you, Colin. That's fantastic. That's one of the good ones. Right. I don't think anybody would have had a problem with it. So I think it's kind of false to say they're mad that he sat during the national anthem. I think they disagree with why he was sitting, what's the problem. And football, it can be, there can be a lot of collusion that's going on there, but who knows? Why he's not on a team, you never know, but why people were upset about that is clear.
Okay, last one has to be about Trump. We'll have to end there. But
okay.
So prediction: does Trump make it to 4 years as president? And
yes.
If so, do any of the rest of us survive?
Our souls may not survive. Trump may get reelected, Jesse. You don't understand. Have you guys been watching America? He got elected in the first place. Why are you surprised here? I mean, it's crazy how things work, I'm very concerned that he'll get reelected. I'm very concerned about it. So, and, I don't know. We'll see. I think I have to find more ways to do events like this to keep myself sane, I guess.
Well, let's turn it over to the audience and take some questions from the audience. Raise your hand, and we'll get a microphone to you so the folks can see it.
People are here.
YouTube. Look at all those people. No, we'll keep talking. I got a lot more sports questions.
More movies?
More movie questions? Yeah.
Sure.
Huge fan of your work.
Oh,
so happy you're here.
I'm happy I'm here too.
I was wondering if you could speak on how people, like every regular day people, can support creative young Black people, I think, in their lives. Because, a lot of times people tend to look up to, like, the Obamas of the world and think, I'm a supporter of him, but what can people do in their everyday lives to champion people around them?
By champion, you mean support creative people in the arts? Is that what you're saying?
I suppose so, but just an everyday conversation kind of thing. Because a lot of times you hear people say, you know, I'm a liberal, I'm a feminist, whatever, right? Or I support.
That's funny.
I know, it really is. And then when it comes down to it, actually, you know, standing up for people when things are happening.
I think they should vote, maybe.
That's a good way to start.
Yeah. When it comes time to represent how you feel about something, show it in the manner of voting, I would say. Making sure people do that. That's the best way to show how you really feel about something. That's why America showed how it really felt about its first black president. You know, it's like, we're gonna go so far in the opposite direction. You know, we're gonna show you with our votes how we really feel about it. Voting to me is still the most powerful tool, certainly in America, that we have to show support for people and ideas and all those things, I think. Yes.
Do you think...
So thoughtful people at film festivals. I'm always amazed by that. Yeah.
Do you think with your political commentary, you're ever successful in changing someone's mind who disagrees with you, or do you think you're really preaching to the choir?
I don't look at it that way, so I think it gets criticized that way, but my goal is to get laughs, and my other goal is maybe, hopefully, to provide clarity, but I'm not in the persuasion business. Like, I never look to persuade somebody to get them off of a point, you know, to be like I'm not an evangelical comedian, you know, like I'm not trying to change people's minds. I want people to laugh and, you know, and hopefully get clarity about something. But I believe people should make up their own minds. I mean, that's what I like to do. So if we agree, that's awesome. But if we don't, that's okay. I don't mind if people disagree. Go on, girl, take that mic.
All right, I think you can hear me, yes, okay, great. So you talked about how you liked the genre smashing and Get
Yes,
Out.
definitely.
So I'm wondering if you have a project either planned or that you would want to do that is like a genre smash that maybe we haven't seen.
I'm working on something currently that I can't talk about yet, but it's in that kind of arena. I love doing that type of stuff. So yes, I'm currently working on something in that type of thing. In that thing. Am I vague enough for you right now?
I know, I'm like, okay, I
Yes.
guess I'm gonna have to listen to your podcast or something.
I
and
haven't
see if I
talked
can
about
get-
it on my podcast. But I'm working at ABC right now to develop shows and that type of stuff. So we're developing something right now that I think is a little different that hopefully people will like. So we'll see. Thanks for the question. That was a sneaky one. Yeah.
Back over here. Hey, fellas, two quick things. You're talking
Sure.
about media manipulation. And have you ever read a book called Trust Me, I'm Lying?
Trust me, I'm lying?
Yeah.
It sounds familiar. Who wrote it?
A guy by the name of Ryan Holiday. It's
No, I don't
an
think
inside
I've
look at a media manipulator when he was running American Apparel.
Oh, okay.
It was
Yes.
incredible. And it talks about the bottom feeder, how a lot of blogs need traction. They'll grab something and then they
Right.
just feed up, right, as well. So that leads me to the next question of, or a question of, what 3 apps are on your phone that you go to for news?
That I go to for news.
Yes.
You're assuming that I get the news on my phone.
I am, actually. I know you get the news on your phone.
People yell out the window, and that's how I hear the news. I read New York Times, Washington Post. I look at some of the blogs that are out there. I look through Twitter, see what people are talking about. I like to look at both sides of the aisle, so I follow people on the right and the left. There's a lot of good people on the right, by the way, who I follow, who are really doing some good work out there. I think you need to get both points of view. That's how I'm trying to make up my own mind. It is, even though I make fun of Fox News and CNN, it's important to see how they're both distilling the news, because sometimes I, might agree with either one of them. There's some, if you're on the left and you want some things on the right, there's some good voices out there, people who have some clarity. Some of the stuff in National Review is worth looking at too, if you want some balance and that kind of stuff. So I just try to look at a little bit of everything. But I can't look at it every day, but once in a while, most of the time I try to check in. So, yes.
You mentioned that each collaboration you do is very unique.
Right.
When you're working with someone like Issa, who seems to draw so much from like her personal, authentic vantage point,
Yes.
do you have like a technique or like a smell
Yes.
test you do where you kind of step back to be like, well, this is really important to you, but maybe we
No,
need
it's the
to-"
opposite. I had to pull all that out of her. So during our creative process of the pilot, it was almost like an interview process. So it was like, no, bitch, tell me that. You know? That was the phrase used over and over. No, bitch, no, what are you talking about? You can't gloss over that. What do you mean by that? You know?
Sorry, do you mean like specific stories?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, we did a lot of storytelling to each other when we were creating the pilot. And I wanted to know everything about her, because I knew the show had to be for where she was emotionally at that time. And that's where we started to create it. And she had already done Awkward Black Girl, and she didn't want to repeat herself. So our process, a lot of it was me interviewing her and us agreeing on this. But when I mean stuff, I mean the emotional stuff that the show would be about, you know, and some of the specific stuff. And she's great. Her instincts are so amazing. And she's so good. She's such a good writer, too. And she would veto me. She would say, no, Larry, we have to keep that in, because I censor myself sometimes, too. And she was a good collaborator in that sense. But she already, even though I say that, she already had a good sense of the types of things she would want. But I was really helpful there in pulling some of that other stuff out and making sure we had it on the page. So that's what that collaboration was like, yeah. Oh, you're welcome.
Over here.
Hi, thank you for
Hello.
being here today.
My pleasure, yeah.
I'm from DC and used to work in politics, so I totally understand everything you're saying. So when it comes to your comedy, do you have topics that are off limit on some
No.
level? Or are there any topics that are off limit?
No.
Or do you see them as a conversation starters?
No, I don't
They're just
believe
out
any
there?
topic should be off limits. I think the key is, what is your point of view on it, you know? But no, like, do you have an example of a topic that should be off limits?
No, I was just curious.
Oh, okay.
If there were certain things that you just
I would never censor myself ahead of time, no. I mean, there are types of jokes that I wouldn't do. I don't want to punch down, and that, I think it's always better to punch up, you know. You don't want to be a bully in comedy, so I guess, yeah. Someone else here.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Huge fan of your work, also.
Oh, thank you.
I was wondering, there's like a pitch event happening after this. And I guess my question is, if there's anyone here who is pitching, I am not, but what is something that you need to hear to get excited about a project?
That's a really good question, because I have done more pitching than I've listened to pitches. And I know it's a nerve-wracking process if you are pitching. And it's tough for me to say what I want to hear, because for me, I think it would be very specific to what the project is. But it's funny, because I'm starting to listen to pitches for my company now for some things. And I guess I always try to hear for what the story is about. And that's what I try to tell writers to do when they're pitching something. You have to very clearly be able to explain something very simply before you get into the complications of what all the details are. You know what I mean? So, like, for instance, I'll give you an example. On the Bernie Mac show, the show was about these children are terrorists, and I don't negotiate with terrorism. You know? I don't negotiate with terrorists. That's really what the show is about, you know? And you have to be able to explain that very simply. And that has to be in the DNA of every scene and everything that comes out of that, you know? Insecure, I don't know who I am or where I'm going, is pretty much what that show is about. And we got that from working on it, figuring it out. And if you look at any scene of Insecure, that's in the DNA of every scene, you know? I don't know who I am, I don't know where I'm going. They doubled down on that most of the time, you know? Like I said, they spend so much money buying tickets to nowhere all the time on Insecure, which makes it very interesting to watch, you know? So you have to know what that show is in your body, and you have to hold on to that for dear life. People can change specifics around it, like executives will try to change stuff. Never let them change the core of what it is about, and breathe that the fullest when you're in that room of what that show is. Oh, my pleasure. People understand. Yes.
I just have a question.
Did you find your button or whatever it was?
It was a jelly bean.
Of course it was.
Not trying to eat it. I was not trying to eat it,
Of course
I
it was a
swear.
jelly bean.
I'm supposed to cut down on sugar, and I was
I
clearly
understand.
called out.
Yeah, that's what happens when you sneak it and then it comes out. See, there you go.
I'm just wondering about the process, like with Issa Rae's Insecure. Like, did she want to specifically pitch this idea to you and work together with you, or is it something like someone said, hey, meet this person, or did HBO do that? Like, how did that process work from
Well, the process was she was at HBO, and Issa had done web series, Awkward Black Girl and some other ones, but she hadn't, done that type of scale, and so they wanted someone to kind of supervise her. They were looking for that, and we were in the same management company, and they asked if I would meet her, and when I did, I realized that I didn't want to supervise her, that I wanted to collaborate with her, and I asked her, I said, it was just after meeting her. That's what I mean about chemistry and that kind of stuff. Our chemistry was so fantastic. We were just making each other laugh. It was like we were brother and sister that had known each other for years, is what it felt like, busting each other's balls from the beginning, that type of thing, in a good creative way too. And I thought, wow, she's amazing. That was my first just impression of her, And so I asked her, I said, hey, would you mind if I wrote this with you? Would you collaborate? She said, no, that'd be great. And so that's how the collaboration came about, But I was just meeting her to see if I might want to supervise her at the time or that type of thing. So it was kind of innocent in some ways,
Time for a couple more? Right here.
Hi, also a fan of your work. I guess everyone here is.
Thank you.
After everything that you've done and all the work that you've been able to actually do with
Is your question, how old are you, Larry?
Oh, sorry, I'm just like super nervous. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who is trying to put a voice on another minority? Like,
What do you mean?
Like, you have given somewhat of a voice to the Black community, like just like with everything you've done, everything Chris Rock does, and everything that Obama's done. Like, I'm Middle Eastern. I can't even technically visit your country because my passport says Iranian.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that. Yeah.
So when it
in
comes...
all fairness, I can't really visit Iran then, too. So.
Yeah, you don't wanna? You really don't wanna. I've been...
That's called a beautiful false equivalency, by the way.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. But try being Iraqi blood, Iranian born, and Canadian by citizenship.
You would say there's a large entry to what the stories you're telling. I would say be as specific as possible with the stories that you want to tell, and that specific will become universal for other people. Ironically, the more specific you are with your story, the more universal and the more people can relate to what it is you're going to. So strive to do that as much as possible.
A lot of our stories are pretty universal because it is like we're people. We're not exactly like this shade or that shade or this culture. Like it's a family, it's people. But when it comes to, you said like smash through the door, and the main color that Hollywood sees is green, but getting through that door is kind of, it's not the easiest thing in the world if you don't have a sledgehammer and you're working with, I don't know, a toothpick and you're trying to get through.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. But be patient, it'll happen, you're very young, and I think there's a lot that's gonna happen in that arena in the next generation, probably.
Well, Larry,
I feel good about that.
Thank you so much
for
being here and sharing with us today, and
for
all that you do.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks, Jess. Thank you, man.